Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program designed to give you, the viewer, a better understanding and a deeper appreciation of the exciting world of chess. I am your host, George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club meets every Wednesday evening from 7 to 11 in room C-159 of the McKay Campus School at the university. And with me today in the control room is our very skillful director, Darren Dame. Assisting him is our multi-time Wachusett Chess Club champion, Bruce Felton of Fitchburg. And on camera is one of the most active Wachusett Chess Club members, Brian Bigelow of Leominster. But last but not least, with me is my trusty co-host and longtime associate, Martin Lane of Lunenburg, one of the strongest and most active chess players in north central Massachusetts. Welcome, Marty.
Good evening, George.
Well, Marty, today we're going to focus our attention on a living legend in chess, especially in New England chess. He is the celebrated World Chess Federation master, John Curdo of Auburn, Massachusetts. Now, what do you know about John Curdo?
Well, John Curdo is, I should say that here in New England, we're lucky that we've had a lot of great chess players come through and play in tournaments, but only one player for the last 60 years has been at the top of most every tournament, and that's John Curdo. He's dominated chess in this area for over 60 years, and he recently passed a milestone where he just, the other week, he won his 865th first place, his first place finish in a tournament. And that's nobody has.
In fact, if there were a Guinness Book of Records in chess, he would certainly be in that record book.
I would think
as
so.
far as having won more chess tournaments than anybody else in the world. Right. 865 tournaments is phenomenal.
This is tournaments, not games.
Tournaments. This is tournaments.
Right.
So if you actually were to calculate how many games he's played or how many tournaments he's played, it's in the thousands. He's probably played tens of thousands of games. He has a phenomenal record, and as you said, he dominated chess. Certainly, 40 years was actually a very peak year.
Peak year.
But he's still active.
Sure, he just won the other week. So.
And you know what? He's going to be turning. I know he's reluctant to have this be made known, but we have to let our viewers know that a week from today, November 14, 2011, he will turn 80 years old, and he is still active in chess. He plays weekend tournaments. He also plays every Tuesday night at the Metro West Chess Club in Natick, which is actually the biggest chess club in the country. The attendance they have at the Metro West Chess Club at the Senior Center in Natick is phenomenal. And he plays there, but he also plays in weekend. He also plays Thursday nights at the Greater Worcester Chess Club at the Hibernian Center in Worcester. So he's a very active chess player, even at the age of 80 now. He won his first Massachusetts State Championship, the Masters Open, in 1948. He was 16 years old, and he's won it 17 times during a period of 1948 through 1985 at least, more times than anybody in the history of Massachusetts chess. So he's a phenomenal player, and he is, as I said, he was a World Chess Federation master. Most of the chess players know him as a FIDE master, and FIDE is the French acronym for the La Fédération Internationale des Échecs, which stands for the International Federation of Chess. And again, that's one of the titles that the World Chess Federation awards. Now, if family and work did not interrupt his play, he would have definitely advanced to international and possibly even grandmaster if he pursued it. But again, work and family do interfere with one's career. But he's a phenomenal player. Now, you were able to conduct an interview with him.
We had initially invited him to be on the show, and he had, he felt he really, wasn't able to make the appearance himself.
Yes.
But he was very gracious in agreeing to a telephone interview, and I had a number of discussions with him. And for those of you who may have seen John Curdo at a tournament, he's usually very reserved. He doesn't speak very much. But in the course of this interview, in the course of our discussions, he really opened up and started to talk about, especially his early years learning about chess. And the sad part is I had so much to ask him. We had so much to talk about. I had to whittle it down to just a few minutes.
Yes.
But I would like to listen to that excerpt It's about 8 minutes long, where he discusses how he first got interested in chess and how he got involved in chess and the early part of his career. If we could start to run that.
Okay, we'll have our director, Darren Dames,
How
start
did you
that
get
tape.
started in chess?
Well, when I was a young kid, I wanted a hunting knife, and we were able to sell, I don't know if you'd call them products. It was seeds, vegetable seed, and Christmas seals. In those days, you licked them and you stuck them on packages or envelopes or something.
Yeah.
They don't do that too much anymore.
No,
Anyways, if you sold enough, you'd get a premium.
So if you sold a certain number, you'd be able to order something from a catalog or something.
And apparently I was an entrepreneur because I was able to order something. And then my parents stepped in and didn't want me to have a knife. Figured I'd cut my fingers off or something. So I said, what else am I going to get? I had no second choice, but there happened to be a small peg-in chess set, the kind with a little drawer where you put the tiny pieces in. And so I ordered that. I still study on a board like that to this day. I mean, the board is about 3.5 inches square.
Do you use that for like side-by-side analysis or something?
Oh, yeah. I use it all the time for analysis.
Do you still have your original board?
Similar ones, but I do not have the original one. I got it on the condition my brothers would learn to play with me, my older brothers, and pretty soon I was beating them all the time, and they refused to play me anymore.
All right, so did it come with rules, and you had to teach yourself the rules or something?
Well, I had just a basic set of the moves. So I went to the local library very close to my home, and it had one chess book by a gentleman named Leopold Hofer. I never forgot. And it was a very small book, and I looked to the rear of the book, and there was chess games in there. And at the time, I thought they looked like algebra or logarithms or something. And I says, oh, I'm going to stay away from that. But I went back to the front of the book and learned the moves. Step by step, I learned how to play through the game. And I played through, there were the famous games, the Immortal game, the Evergreen Zugzwang game, and so on. And I played through them, and that lit the fire that's been burning for over 60 years now.
So then what the next step, I mean, how did you get involved in playing? Did you play in a club? How did you get into tournament chess from just playing with your brothers?
I actually wrote to the Lynn Chamber of Commerce and said, where's the chess club? And it turns out they had one in the railroad station, the old railroad station in Lynn, Mass. And it was on the second floor, and it was right next to the railroad tracks.
And how old were you at this time, do you think?
I would guess I was 13-ish, 14.
So at the age of 13, you wrote to the Chamber of Commerce asking if there was a chess club.
Oh, yeah. And somewhere around there, I went to the main library in downtown Lynn, and they had a bunch of chess books, but they were in the adult section. And I got special permission to go in and get them. I don't know, there's maybe 7 or 8, 10 books maybe. And I went through them all over and over and over again. Anyways, to get back to the chess club, I went there, and one of the first things I saw near the door was a chess magazine. I had never seen a chess magazine. A magazine all about chess. It happened to be Chess Review. So you know what I did?
I'm going to guess that you stole it.
How'd you guess?
I don't know. Just the way you said that, like you're still carrying some guilt about this.
Oh yeah, I'm very guilty. Maybe I ought to return it. Anyways, I became a regular member at the club there. We played. There was so little chess in those days, organized tournaments I'm talking about. So there was a Metropolitan League. It included Boston clubs, the Boston City Club, the Boylston, and so on, and Lynn, and a few others. And you'd play, one game a week, that type of thing.
Sort of club matches, that kind of thing.
There's no tournaments every weekend like there is nowadays.
Like there is now. And how did the tournaments differ from the way they are now? Now we have, digital clocks and time delay and certified tournament directors?
Extremely different.
Go on.
Yeah, you might go to a club and everyone might not have a clock. You know, it was things of that nature, and you soon learn not to play a person without a clock because.
Right. How did they manage that? Did they just?
Well, I vaguely remember nightmares where you'd have to sit there while your opponent's probably losing and he doesn't want to move. It's that type of thing. I don't remember any specific incidents in that respect, but there were clocks that were electric and you had to plug them in, and they didn't have flags as they have nowadays, no way of knowing when your time expired.
Yeah.
And when you threw the switch, the hand would keep going for a couple of seconds and so on, and things like that. And of course, in those days, electricity wasn't a big thing, outlets at every wall. I remember moving tables over near the wall so that we could plug in the clock, that type of business. But sooner or later, I ended up with a little plastic clock. It was 2 watches set into a plastic base. That's the way I remember my first chess clock.
Right. So you were playing with the local chess club, and then while you were in high school, you won the state schoolboy championship, and then you went on to beat Harlow Daly, who was the top New England player, I guess, at the time, at about the same time, and then your chess career started to rise. What did your parents think about all this?
Well, my parents were laid back is not a good word, but I remember the way I went into the schoolboy tournament, that was in 1947. My father actually took me into Boston because I wouldn't have known how to get in there by myself. And I remember we came back after I had won it, and he mentioned to a couple of his friends, he was rather proud that I had won it, and his friends didn't react at all. So I got my name in the newspaper and things of that nature. It was short-lived, so to speak. Anyways, the next year I won the state adult championship in 1948.
The first of your Massachusetts championships.
Yeah.
And then you got an invitation to something called the Log Cabin Club, which I've heard reference to, but I don't know very much about it. Could you tell us a little bit about what this Log Cabin Club was about?
Yeah, that was a chess club in West Orange, New Jersey, run by an eccentric millionaire, and he would draw people from all over the place to play in his club. He would charge like $5 a year for membership or something like that to get people into his club, and I would travel all the way to New Jersey just to play one game down there. I would go by bus. And it was really quite an experience. We played against the Manhattan Chess Club at one time. Well, prior to that, his club, the league down there was also a metropolitan league. It included the Marshall Chess Club, the Manhattan Chess Club, and of course, the Log Cabin Chess Club and a few others. And one year, I guess the Manhattan didn't go in, so Log Cabin knocked off the Marshall and won the championship. So the next year, Manhattan says, no way is Log Cabin going to win this year. So I went down there and for that particular match, and there were, I think, something like 8 board matches. And the teams were so strong that they would draw lots to see who played which boards. I think I played 5th board, and I played Arnold Denker, who was U.S. champion a couple of years prior.
On 5th board, yeah. So that tells you how strong it was.
Oh yeah, they beat the devil out of us, and but it was quite an experience to go down there and travel all the way down there by bus and all the way back just to play one game.
Well, that was an interview with John Curdo done by my co-host Martin Lane. And Marty, among the tens of thousands of games that John Curdo has played, we're going to present our viewers one of them, one of the most exciting games that Curdo ever played in his career. It was against international grandmaster Robert Byrne. Where was this game played?
This was a game that Curdo himself suggested that we might look at.
Yes.
And it comes from the 1994 U.S. Open, played in Chicago. In the 4th round, and he was paired up against Grandmaster Byrne. He said he always always faced grandmasters with some trepidation because, of course, they're ranked somewhat higher than masters than he was, and so it was quite a challenge for him to play against this actually very well-known grandmaster.
Okay, so
a New York Times columnist.
Oh yeah, long
at one
time.
time a candidate for the World Championship.
In fact,
in the
and
80s,
also
I
a
think,
multi-time U.S. Open
Right.
champion.
Right.
Also competed in the U.S. Closed Championships. Yeah, so he's
Right.
one of the top players,
top players in the country, in the
Absolutely.
world, actually.
All right, so who
Okay.
had white
So,
in this game?
Curdo had white, Byrne had black. Curdo opened pawn on e2 to e4. As we've said so many times before, it's a central pawn. It opens up diagonals for the queen and the bishop.
Okay. Well, in response to e4, Byrne played c5. The pawn on c7 goes to c5. We've seen this before.
The Sicilian defense.
It's known as the worldwide. It's known as the Sicilian
Right.
defense. Very old defense.
Right.
In fact, one of the most popular defenses to e4. All right. So what did Curdo do now on the second move?
Curdo develops his knight on g1, plays it to f3, a good solid developing move. Very
Okay.
common.
All right. Now Black has a number of choices here. Black actually could play, knight c6, could play e6, but he decides to play d6. The pawn on d7 moves to d6.
Right.
So that's one of a good reply for
Right.
Black.
And for white, when Curdo, one of the standard moves would be play the d2 pawn to d4.
That's standard. That is
that's
actually
a standard. That's probably the most
commonly played move. Yes.
C3 is also reasonably common.
Yes.
Curdo chose one that was a little bit less common. He moved the bishop on f1 to b5 check, developing the bishop. It goes by a variety of names, sometimes the Rossolimo variation, a few others.
Yes, and I know it as the Moscow variation. Some players know it as the Venice attack, Canal attack. It has so many names,
Right.
but it's a playable move. Nothing wrong with it. All right, so now the king is under attack, so we have to get out of check. And Black only has three replies. He can either play knight c6 blocking the check, or he could play bishop d7 blocking the check. But Byrne decides to play knight on b8, the d7 blocks the check that way.
Right.
All right, so it's now Curdo's fourth move coming up.
The standard reply here is for white usually to castle. It's very common. Curdo chose, again, a slightly less common move, takes the d2 pawn and plays it to d4.
All right. Okay, so now he's attacking the pawn on c5, but of course it's defended, at least with the d pawn here. Right. So now, Byrne could have taken that pawn. The c pawn could have taken on d4, but instead he chooses to play knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4.
Right.
All right, so what does Curdo do now?
Curdo advances his pawn, his pawn on e4 to e5, attacking the knight or attacking the d6 pawn.
All right. So now this knight could actually move possibly to e4. Could also go back, which wouldn't make any sense at all. But instead, Byrne comes up with queen a5 check.
Check.
We have a check on the king, but we also have an attack on the bishop
Right.
at the same time.
So Curdo needs to find a move that will both protect the bishop on b5 and block the check.
All right.
And the one move that does that is the knight on b1 plays to c3. Blocks the check, protects the bishop.
All right. Now what Byrne plays here, he plays the knight which is under attack from this pawn on e5, and he plays it to e4. Now we have a double attack on this knight on c3, which is overworked because it's also defending the bishop on b5.
Right.
All right, so what does Curdo do now?
Well, he needs to relieve the pin, we call it, the pin against the check.
Yes.
And so he takes his bishop on c1 and plays that to d2.
All right, so bishop d2 is Curdo's move. Well, here is where Byrne now plays. He takes the defender away from this bishop by playing knight takes c3, is now attacking the queen, and also the knight's attacked the queen, but the queen is attacking the bishop. All right, so what does Curdo do now?
Well, Curdo can't simply recapture at c3 because
he would lose the bishop
will fall.
Right.
But Curdo has a resource. The bishop here is pinning the knight against the king, so he first takes the knight on d7, check.
Okay. And the Byrne just simply recaptures. The bishop takes d7. All right.
And now he recaptures the pawn on the knight on c3 with the bishop.
Okay, so
attacking the queen now.
So after bishop takes c3, the queen has to move, and what Byrne plays, he plays the queen to a6. Now, why does he play the queen to a6?
Well, first of all,
does
the
that do?
queen. Well, first of all, the queen doesn't have all that many squares to go. It can only retreat back behind its pawns.
Yes, it could have gone back on the dark
Right,
squares.
right.
Yeah.
But here, because it covers this diagonal down to the f1, it prevents white from castling. Becomes a real, if white could castle in this position, he'd be golden. But he
I
can't.
see.
It prevents castling.
All right, so
The
prevents
drawback
white-
is that the queen is
Out of
sitting
play.
on it,
Look at
right.
how this poor queen is out of play.
Right.
It's played here to stop white from castling, but it also puts itself out of play.
Okay.
All right. So,
Right.
What does Curdo do in response to queen a6?
Well, in a position like this, what you want to, where he's looking for ways to cramp up black's position, and so he takes the pawn on d4 and advances it now to d5. It prevents the d6 pawn from advancing.
Right. Okay. All right. So here's where Byrne now he realizes he's got to give himself some space here. He plays the pawn on e7 to e6. So he plays e6. It gives him actually an opportunity to bring this bishop into play.
Right. And it also opens up the possibility of exchanges. Exchanges here
yes.
would help
Yes.
free up the queen.
Absolutely.
And
All
so
right.
so Curdo is not going to start any exchanges because that only helps
All right.
Byrne.
Okay.
What he does, he's going to build up some pressure on the king. He's going to play knight on f3 to g5.
All righty. Okay. Okay. All right. So Byrne now, what he plays here, this pawn on d6 can now. What he does, I believe he takes d takes
D
e5.
takes e5, right.
So he takes d takes e5. All right. So what does Curdo do in response to this move? D
Well,
takes e5.
Curdo, now his knight is attacking this critical f7 pawn. He wants to find a way to increase the pressure, increase the attack. He played queen to f3 in the game.
Yes.
But when we were talking about the game later in this interview, he pointed out that it would have been better for him to play the queen all the way to h5 first,
Yes.
threatening that and forcing
That would have forced actually the pawn to come up and block this attack.
chase the queen away, right?
And then the queen can go
and
back
then
to
it
f3.
can come back to f3.
And this is even stronger.
Stronger, right.
Because now, this is a much stronger continuation.
Right.
But he didn't do that.
No, he didn't do it. He saw that in later
So
analysis.
he played queen
to
f3 immediately.
Right.
All right. So now we're threatening to come down here with this check here.
Check.
So the way to stop this, Byrne played f6.
Right.
f7 to f6. He's also attacking the
He's
knight.
attacking the knight.
Okay.
So there's no really good retreat for the knight. He wants to keep up the pressure. He doesn't want to be retreating his pieces. He wants to keep up this attack. He wants to keep up the pressure on the king.
Right.
So he plays the pawn on d5, exchanges on e6, threatening the bishop, opening up the d file.
Right.
Which becomes useful later.
All right. Now, we should show our viewers, if we get on the board again, why Byrne did not see, he actually could have taken this pawn on e6 with the bishop. Let's follow this through and show why Byrne did not play this. He did not take bishop takes e6 because Curdo would have taken back knight takes e6.
Right.
And then that would force the queen to take back on e6 with the queen. But of course, when the queen leaves this square, it allows the queen to capture this pawn
on b7, attacking
the rook.
Right.
And now if the rook moves, this pawn is going to be lost. So black would be losing material.
Right.
So that's why he didn't do that. So let's go back to this position here. And we have the pawn here. Do we have actually here?
And the knight.
The knight is here.
And the bishop.
And the bishop's here. And the pawn here. Okay, instead, he doesn't take that pawn. He plays bishop c6, attacks the queen.
And he also can't take the knight.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
It leads to mate.
That's right. He can't take the. That's right. He can't take the. All right. So the queen is now under attack.
Okay, so he has to move the queen.
All right. So what does he do?
He moves. He doesn't bother with a check out here.
Yes.
Because it can simply be blocked.
Right.
He increases the pressure by playing the queen to f5.
All right. Okay. So now Byrne realizes he can now release this bishop on f8 and play it to e7. He plays the e7. Okay.
Now,
all right.
At this point, Byrne could take the knight
Yes.
and not suffer any great consequences. What Curdo does in order to restrict or to further hamper black's pieces, he castles queenside, taking
Yes.
control of the d file with his rook.
All right. Now here's where Byrne now, in response to the castling queen side by white, plays G6
And
attacks the
he
queen.
still can't. He still
Yes.
can't take the knight first. He has to
No,
chase the
he
queen
has to
away.
chase the queen. All right, so
Right.
where does that queen go?
Well, the queen has a few choices. It could go this way. It could come back here.
Yes.
But what he does, he brings it back to H3.
Yes.
Because he knows that the king can't go to the queen side. The king is going to be restricted to the king side, and the queen is over here to carry on the attack.
All right, well, this is where Byrne says, well, now he says, now he'll capture the knight. So the F pawn captures. F takes G5,
Right.
and he wins a piece here.
Wins a piece.
All right, so what does Curdo do in response to this?
Okay, well, he now takes the pawn on E5 is free, and he's going to bring the bishop into the attack by playing bishop take E5,
Right.
centralizes the bishop, controls these two dials, and attacks the rook.
Right, and he can't move this rook to save it because this
Then the
queen will
queen
actually
comes
win down here. So, but he now conveniently can now castle, which he does, and now he's got a rook on a semi-open
Right.
file. So how does Curdo continue after Byrne castles
Right,
here?
and this is where John Curdo identifies this as the high point, the key move of the game, 18, queen to H6.
All right, let's see that. So he played queen H6,
And
you
let's hear what he has to say about this position.
Okay.
This is the high point, the critical point of the game. I have a rule of thumb, and I may have read it somewhere, I don't know, but ideally you need 3 pieces to attack the enemy king. Now, I had 3 pieces, but I sacrificed the knight. That's a lot of people don't realize. They go after the enemy king with 1 or 2 pieces, and it's usually not enough. Sometimes a pawn will contribute, like the E6 pawn here. What I do with H4 is I bring my H-rook into the battle. See, so that is the 3rd piece. And of course, my rook at D1 also figures in some of the combinations, some of the lines. It could go down to D7 in some instances. So I've got enough firepower, so it's up to Robert Byrne at this particular point to stop me. And this is where he plays what is considered his losing mistake.
And let's play the move that Byrne played.
Right.
He played rook F6. He blocked stops the mate
Right.
by blocking with the rook F6.
Right.
So what did Curdo do?
Curdo plays the pawn on H2 to H4, attacking this G4 with the potential of opening up the file.
All right. Now here's where Byrne now plays bishop F8 and attacks the queen.
The queen is trapped.
Right. Okay. The queen
So,
can't move.
Queen can't move.
Well, it can.
But it
well,
can
yeah,
move. And what it
but-
does is
but
plays H7, takes on H7 check.
Queen takes H7 check. So the king is forced now to the king after queen takes H7 check. The king is forced to take. The king takes H7, and what does Curdo do?
The pawn on H4 takes the pawn on G5. Discovered check with the rook.
Okay, so the king has to move. Although he could block with the bishop, but that would just lose the bishop to another check with the rook. So instead, he just moves the king, the G8. King G8 is Byrne's move.
Right.
And
now he plays pawn on G5, takes the rook on F6, and Byrne resign.
Okay.
His mate is
because
inevitable.
mate is unstoppable because F7 is threatening mate.
Is mate.
And
it
even
can't
if he
be
comes
stopped.
back with the bishop to E8,
It's
he
still-
still has F7 because the check
Now he
will
brings the
allow the
rook
rook down to H8.
Mate.
It's all over. All right, so this was a game played at the U.S. Open
In 1994
in Chicago.
in Chicago.
Okay, all right.
And
so
so what I'd like to do is I'd like to end with a quotation that John Curdo said is his favorite quotation as regards a game of chess, and it really sums up this particular game.
all right, well we can run, Darren Dame, our director, could run this this
So
quote.
here's my favorite quote by Pavlik. Chess is a struggle of ideas, a struggle of nerves, and, most important, a struggle with oneself.
Okay. Well, and of course, you know, Curdo's one of his heroes was Dr. Tarash. We've done a program on Zebra Tarash. So Curdo was he's a classical player, and again, he played frequently in Fitchburg. You know, we started in the early 1960s. 1963, he played at the First Parish Church Unitarian, in the first, well, it wasn't the first Central New England Open, but it was the third Central New England Open Championship, and he played, at the Fitchburg Lodge of Elks, the Knights of Columbus on Electric Avenue, at the Old Holiday in Leominster. He is well known to chess players.
Comes to the Pillsbury Memorial.
Right. So we're going to see him actually in Leominster at the Pillsbury Memorial next month. So chess fans, stay tuned for another edition of Chess Chat. Next month we're going to bring you another exciting game from the exciting world of chess.